Indonesia is the kind of country that forces you to rethink what you thought you knew about the world. A land of contradictions, extremes, and wonders, it holds a staggering 285 to 286 million people as of 2025, ranking fourth in global population, behind only China, India, and the United States, and just ahead of Pakistan. Yet despite its sheer scale, Indonesia remains oddly invisible in the minds of many outside Asia. Ask the average non-Indonesian to name 3 famous people from this massive country, and chances are they'll stumble after mentioning Bali, the Komodo dragon, or perhaps a natural disaster. This paradox of being enormous yet overlooked is where Indonesia's story begins. The numbers themselves are breathtaking. With 1.9 million square kilometers of land, Indonesia is the 14th largest country in the world by area. But unlike most countries on that list, Indonesia's territory is scattered, a vast archipelago of more than 17,500 islands bridging Asia and Oceania, straddling the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Its geography makes it both powerful and fragile. Lay the map of Indonesia across the United States, and it stretches from coast to coast. Place it over Europe, and it reaches from Ireland to Turkmenistan. And yet, most people outside the region struggle to appreciate its true size and complexity. This is partly because Indonesia is more than just size. It is density. Java, one of its islands, covers less than 1% of Russia's landmass, yet it contains over 56% of Indonesia's population, more than 150 million people. That makes Java more populous than Japan, Russia, or Mexico as entire countries. Its population density rivals city-states like Monaco or Macau. Why do so many live here? The answer is in the soil. Volcanic eruptions that devastate in one moment enrich the land in the next, creating some of the most fertile rice-growing plains on Earth. This love-hate relationship with volcanoes is one of Indonesia's defining traits. Danger and abundance, destruction and renewal, existing side by side. But alongside these natural dynamics lies a modern crisis. Jakarta, the capital city with more than 10 million residents and part of a metropolitan area of 34 million, is literally sinking under the weight of its population, climate pressures, and mismanagement. The government has committed at least $32 billion to build a new capital, Nusantara, from scratch on Borneo. It's a move that has raised eyebrows worldwide. Is this visionary planning or a monumental gamble? Skeptics call it another megaproject destined to fail, while optimists see it as Indonesia's chance to reinvent itself. Indonesia is also a linguistic and cultural puzzle. With over 700 languages spoken and 1,300 ethnic groups, its diversity is both its greatest strength and its greatest challenge. The national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, or Unity in Diversity, reflects this balancing act. For centuries, Indonesians have negotiated identity, belonging, and survival across islands, religions, and histories. Today, that negotiation continues on a larger stage as Indonesia seeks recognition as one of the world's most important but underestimated powers. Indonesia's landscape is breathtaking: lush rainforests, smoking volcanoes, rice terraces, coral reefs. But beneath the beauty lies danger. Indonesia sits on the infamous Ring of Fire, the tectonic horseshoe where 90% of the world's earthquakes occur, and where 75% of active volcanoes still burn. With 147 volcanoes, 76 of them active, this country lives in constant threat of eruptions, earthquakes, and tsunamis. Since the year 2000 alone, it has suffered 18 major earthquakes over 7.5 magnitude. The 2004 Sumatra earthquake, one of the most powerful ever recorded, unleashed a tsunami that killed more than 230,000 people, devastating Aceh province and reshaping the global understanding of disaster risk. And yet, despite all this danger, Indonesians continue to build homes, plant rice fields, and live in the shadows of these fiery mountains. Why? Because every eruption replenishes the land with minerals. turning lava fields into fertile ground. Without these volcanoes, the densely populated island of Java might never have supported its tens of millions. Survival here is not about avoiding risk, it's about living with it, even when the earth beneath your feet is always moving. This love-hate relationship with fire goes beyond agriculture. It has shaped culture, spirituality, and politics. In many villages, volcanoes are seen as sacred beings, protectors and destroyers in one. Traditional ceremonies are still held to appease the spirits of Mount Merapi or Mount Agung, as if honoring them might keep eruptions at bay. But at the same time, modern Indonesia has had to invest billions in disaster response, seismographs, early warning systems, evacuation drills. And still, each eruption and quake tests the resilience of the people. When Jakarta sinks due to rising seas and over-extraction of groundwater, or when tsunamis sweep through coastal towns, Indonesians mourn, rebuild, and move forward. To outsiders, it may look like tragedy repeating itself. To Indonesians, it's life. Life lived on the edge of fire and water. The question is, how long can this balance hold as climate change intensifies storms, floods, and geological risks? Will Indonesia's greatest blessing, its fertile volcanic soil, one day become its curse? If geography and volcanoes make Indonesia dangerous, its diversity makes it dazzling and complicated. Imagine trying to run a country where more than 1,300 ethnic groups coexist, where over 700 languages are spoken, and where people live scattered across islands separated by seas. That's Indonesia. Its national motto, Unity in Diversity, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, isn't just a nice slogan, it's a survival strategy. The Javanese, who make up about 42% of the population, dominate politics and culture. But then you have the Sundanese, the Batak, the Bugis, the Dayaks, the Papuans, and hundreds more, each with their own traditions, dialects, and rivalries. Keeping this vast mosaic together has been one of the hardest challenges for every Indonesian leader since independence. Think about it. How do you create a shared national identity in a place where people on one island may have almost nothing in common with people on another, except for the flag they salute? It's like holding together dozens of different nations under a single roof. Language became the glue. In 1945, when Indonesia declared independence, leaders made a bold choice. Instead of imposing Javanese, the majority language, they elevated Bahasa Indonesia, a relatively young and neutral trade language, as the national tongue. It was an artificial solution, but it worked. Today, Indonesians from Sumatra to Papua can understand one another through Bahasa, even while speaking their mother tongues at home. But unity is still fragile. Regions like Aceh, with its history of separatism, or Papua, with ongoing tensions, remind the world that unity in diversity is easier said than done. Add religion. Indonesia is the world's largest Muslim-majority nation, with nearly 87% of people following Islam. And the mix becomes even more complex. Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, and indigenous faiths all coexist, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. And yet, somehow, this sprawling archipelago holds together, year after year, decade after decade. Is it fragile miracle or a time bomb waiting to explode? Java is not just another island, it is the beating heart of Indonesia. Despite being smaller than Greece, it holds more than half of Indonesia's entire population. Over 140 million people live here, making it one of the most crowded places on Earth. From above, Java looks like a green carpet, stitched with endless rice paddies, dotted with volcanoes that pierce the sky. These volcanoes, Mount Merapi, Mount Bromo, Mount Semeru, are not only symbols of danger, but also of life, because their ash makes the soil some of the most fertile in the world. This is why Java became Indonesia's agricultural powerhouse. For centuries, its rice fields have fed millions, creating both abundance and dependence. But here lies the paradox. The same volcanoes that nourish can also destroy. Villages live with the constant possibility of eruption, ash clouds, and lava flows. So why do people keep coming here? generation after generation, because the risks are outweighed by the rewards. Fertility, jobs, and proximity to Jakarta, the economic core, make Java irresistible. But can an island this overcrowded sustain the pressures of climate change, sinking cities, and dwindling resources? Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, sits on Java's northwestern coast, and it is a city unlike any other. Home to over 10 million people, and more than 30 million in the greater metropolitan area, it is one of the most congested, chaotic, and yet vibrant capitals in the world. But here's the twist. Jakarta is literally sinking. Over-extraction of groundwater combined with rising sea levels is causing parts of the city to sink by as much as 25 centimeters per year. By 2050, large portions could be underwater. That's why Indonesia is building a new capital, Nusantara, on the island of Borneo, at a projected cost of $32 billion. Supporters say it's visionary, critics call it reckless. Will moving the capital solve Indonesia's problems or just move them elsewhere? After all, Java will still hold most of the population, most of the power, and most of the pressure. And as history shows, when too much depends on a single island, the entire nation feels the strain. Indonesia's geography is defined not just by land, but by sea. With the world's third longest coastline, stretching over 54,000 kilometers, Indonesia is essentially a maritime empire. But here's the irony. Many Indonesians live inland, disconnected from the waters that surround them. Ferries link the islands, but journeys can take days or weeks, weaving through treacherous waters. To travel from Jayapura in the east to Banda Aceh in the west, essentially one end of the nation to the other, would take nearly 10 days by sea and involve multiple ferry changes. And yet, this vast maritime space is what makes Indonesia strategically priceless. The Strait of Malacca, running between Sumatra and Malaysia, is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, with 40% of global trade passing through. Whoever controls Indonesia controls the gateway between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. That's power, that's leverage, but it's also vulnerability, piracy, territorial disputes, and the looming presence of China all complicate the picture. For centuries, Indonesia's islands were crossroads for global trade. Spices, nutmeg, cloves, pepper once made these islands legendary, drawing in Portuguese, Dutch, and British colonizers. Today, oil, gas, coal, and palm oil fuel the economy, but dependency on raw exports leaves Indonesia exposed to global price swings. The oceans still bring wealth, but also risk. Rising seas threaten coastal cities. Illegal fishing depletes stocks. Climate change fuels storms that disrupt shipping and drown villages. And yet, despite all these risks, Indonesia has not fully embraced its maritime identity. President Joko Widodo once pledged to make Indonesia the world's maritime fulcrum, but progress has been uneven. The oceans connect the islands, but they also isolate them. The question remains, will Indonesia's future be written on land or on water? Religion is not just a private matter in Indonesia. It is the backbone of society, the lens through which politics, culture, and identity are seen. With nearly 87% of its people Muslim, Indonesia is the largest Muslim-majority country on Earth. But unlike the Middle East, Islam here took a different path. It arrived not through conquest, but through trade, carried by merchants from India and the Arabian Peninsula, blending with local traditions and animist beliefs. The result is a uniquely Indonesian Islam, often tolerant, diverse, and culturally embedded. Mosques stand beside churches, Hindu temples, and Buddhist shrines. Bali remains predominantly Hindu, while pockets of Christianity exist across Sulawesi and Papua. To outsiders, this religious mosaic looks harmonious. But beneath the surface, tensions simmer. Islamist movements have grown louder. Blasphemy laws have sparked controversy, and interreligious clashes, though rare, reveal the fragility of harmony. Religion is Indonesia's greatest unifier, but also its deepest fault line. The struggle is not just about belief, it's about identity. In 2017, Jakarta's governor, a Christian of Chinese descent, was convicted of blasphemy after mass protests, sending shockwaves through the nation. Critics called it a triumph of hardline politics over pluralism. Supporters saw it as a defense of faith. Both views revealed something critical. Religion in Indonesia is never neutral. It is political capital, cultural shield, and social weapon all at once. Yet, amid the tension, there is resilience. Festivals, shared traditions, and interfaith networks show that Indonesians still fight to preserve tolerance. The question is, as populism and radicalism rise worldwide, can Indonesia remain an exception? Or will religion become the wedge that tears its unity apart? Indonesia's history cannot be told without colonialism. For centuries, the Dutch ruled the archipelago through the infamous Dutch East India Company, VOC, exploiting its spices, people, and land. The VOC was one of the world's first multinational corporations, and it drained Indonesia of wealth while cementing European dominance. By the time independence came in 1945, after Japanese occupation and bitter struggle, Indonesia was battered but determined. Yet, the scars of colonialism linger. Borders drawn by colonizers cut through ethnic groups. Infrastructure was designed for extraction, not development. Education favored elites, leaving rural communities behind. And perhaps most damaging of all, the Dutch left behind a centralized system of control, Jakarta at the top, everyone else below, that still shapes politics today. But colonialism also sparked resistance. And from that resistance grew nationalism. Figures like Sukarno, Indonesia's first president, used the memory of colonial oppression to forge unity in a fractured land. The irony is that while Indonesia freed itself politically, economically, it remained tied to global markets set by its former rulers. Palm oil plantations, mining concessions, and shipping routes still mirror colonial patterns. Even today, debates rage. Is Indonesia truly independent, or is it still trapped in the structures created by outsiders? History here is not past. It is alive, shaping identity, fueling resentment, and reminding Indonesians of both their vulnerability and their resilience. When Indonesia declared independence in 1945, it was not just breaking from Dutch colonialism, it was inventing itself from scratch. With more than 1,300 ethnic groups and 700 languages, the risk of fragmentation was real. Sukarno, the first president, tried to unify the nation under the idea of unity in diversity, but unity came at a cost. In 1965, after an alleged coup attempt, the army massacred up to 1 million suspected communists, an event still shrouded in silence and trauma. Suharto's New Order regime ruled with an iron fist for over 30 years, crushing dissent but delivering stability. When the Asian financial crisis hit in 1997, riots forced him out, and Indonesia entered an experiment: democracy. Today, Indonesia is hailed as the third largest democracy in the world. But beneath the pride lurks fragility. Elections are noisy, money-driven, and polarizing. The question is, can a democracy this vast, this diverse, survive the pressures of corruption, extremism, and inequality? Freedom House ranks Indonesia partly free. Corruption scandals dominate headlines. The judiciary is questioned, and oligarchs with vast business empires wield more power than politicians. Yet, compared to many neighbors, Indonesia remains a miracle, a Muslim-majority democracy in a region filled with monarchies, dictatorships, and military juntas. Protests erupt, but they are not crushed as in Myanmar. Journalists face lawsuits, but newspapers still criticize the government. It's messy, imperfect, fragile, yet alive. Democracy in Indonesia is like a volcano. It simmers, sometimes erupts, but it has not yet destroyed the land it shapes. Indonesia's geography is both blessing and curse. It is one of the most biodiverse countries on Earth, home to orangutans, tigers, Komodo dragons, and coral reefs that dazzle divers. It has rainforests that breathe for the planet, mangroves that protect against tsunamis, and fertile lands that feed millions. But this paradise is fragile. Deforestation for palm oil plantations has destroyed vast swaths of jungle. mining scars mountains, plastic chokes rivers, and every year, wildfires send toxic haze across Southeast Asia, suffocating cities in Singapore and Malaysia. The world blames Indonesia. Indonesia blames greedy corporations and foreign demand. Who is right? Both. The forests are burning not just because of local farmers, but because of global markets hungry for cheap oil, cheap coal, cheap wood. Indonesia is paradise, but paradise under siege. And then there are the disasters no human can control. Indonesia sits on the ring of fire, where tectonic plates collide, earthquakes strike, and volcanoes erupt. In 2004, a tsunami off Sumatra killed over 230,000 people, one of the deadliest disasters in modern history. Mount Merapi erupts so often that villagers have evacuation bags always packed. It is a country where beauty and terror coexist. And here's the paradox. It is this danger that makes Indonesia resilient. People here live with uncertainty, adapt to disruption, rebuild after catastrophe. The question is, how long can resilience hold in the face of climate change, rising seas, and megacities that never stop growing? Indonesia is often overlooked, but ignoring it is a mistake. With 276 million people, it is the fourth most populous country in the world, larger than Russia, larger than Brazil. By 2050, it will have more people than the United States. Its economy is already in the top 20 globally and rising. It is rich in nickel, coal, palm oil, and fisheries, resources the world needs for electric cars, energy, and food. Geopolitically, it sits at the crossroads of the Indian and Pacific Oceans, a gatekeeper of global trade. China courts it, the US courts it, ASEAN relies on it. Indonesia is no longer just a local giant. It is a global player in the making. But power comes with risk. Can Indonesia modernize without losing its soul? Can it urbanize without drowning its cities? Can it embrace global trade without destroying its forests? The future of Indonesia is uncertain, but its importance is undeniable. If it succeeds, it could become Asia's next great power, a democratic, diverse, resource-rich nation bridging East and West. If it fails, it could descend into environmental collapse, political fragmentation, or authoritarian rule. For outsiders, Indonesia is still that big country with Bali. For Indonesians, it is home, a complex, fragile, beautiful place where contradictions are daily life. Maybe that's the point. Indonesia is not meant to be simple. It is not meant to fit neatly into headlines. It is a country of volcanoes and rainforests, of 700 languages and one national motto: unity in diversity. And in that contradiction lies both its greatest challenge and its greatest hope.